think I'm always ready to talk when that happens. Hi, everyone. Thanks for your time today. This, believe it or not, probably takes about a full hour. I apologize, but hey, the good news, if you're here or you signed up for it, you will have the recording, which is good. I'm Doug Morris. I'm the founder and chief product officer here at CSI, and I'm joined with JT Fiedler, who heads up sales here at CSI. Believe it or not, I think he knows the product almost as good as me, if not better. So he's going to help me out with this today. This is sort of our first version of the data management suite training. There's a lot you can do with it. We've toned it down a little bit. We're going to cover the 5 basic things you can do with the product. We'll have an advanced version of this probably in the next couple months to really get into some fun things, but this is the basic stuff. A lot of the questions that we get over and over again. So we thought we'd do a reset, walk you through everything, and see how it goes. So with that, JT, what are we going to learn today?
Yeah, so we're going to first touch on some of the settings and options found in the iMIS Data Management Suite. From there, we're going to go into some use cases for each of the action items available. So inserting with matching, updating, insert update, and our newest enhancement, the delete functionality. From there, we're going to answer some common questions we see get sent into support. Then we're going to do some best practices, some tips that we recommend. And then we're going to show the roadmap for iDMS, what's going to be enhanced to the product, what is coming in 2022. And then with whatever time is left over, we will open it up for questions. Throughout the presentation, feel free to use that Q&A or chat, and we will assess those at the end.
All right, so JT talked about settings. We did this training for the CSI staff on Monday. They gave us some great feedback. We did it again for Asia Pacific last night with that feedback put in, and we've enhanced it a little bit more today. And I won't say that last night's training was the best, but hey, practice makes perfect, which we didn't do. So your the iDMS settings when you're in the data management suite is right up there. There's a settings button. And you're going to see your default settings. The first thing in there is a clear cache option. The lead developer for the data management suite is French. He likes to do fun things like clear cache if you must. Really, you're only going to need to use that if you go into the data management suite and that IQA that you just created in iMIS is not there. I see it 99 times out of 100 appear immediately, but sometimes clearing the cache, going to reset the communications with the data management suite in iMIS. It doesn't hurt to do it. You just shouldn't have to do it very often. Next up is our newest feature, and this is used when you're doing an insert update. And it's a really cool thing to say, hey, listen, I've got a set of records. Some of them are in iMIS, some of them are not. I only want the ones that are not in iMIS. Don't touch the ones that are already in iMIS. Previously, if you had a spreadsheet like that, anything in that spreadsheet would be updating records in iMIS. And you may not want that. You may say, listen, my spreadsheet has some brand new records and a bunch of other records that I don't trust. I only want the brand new. Bring those in. So you have the ability to do that now with the product. We try to validate your data ahead of time. We'd rather let you know something's wrong than halfway through the import having it throw an error because say you were bringing a subscriptions product code in that didn't exist. So we do some light validation on your data. We're always looking to enhance that. So if you ever do run into an error and you're like, it would be great if the data management suite told me this ahead of time, we'll ask you to share that with us later on and how to do that. But this is a way, listen, I got my data. It's perfect. Don't do any validations to it. Fine. Automatically continue on error. This is user taste. I know people that say, listen, I got 10,000 records to import. I don't want it stopping on record 3. Get them all done. I have friends and customers that say, no, if it fails on record 3, stop. I want to go look at my data. I want to figure out what's going on. And then I'm going to go back and restart the import at, say, record 3. So it's totally up to you. Do you want it to stop when it runs into an issue, or do you want it to keep going? All the ones I'm showing you right now are defaults. They're what is going to happen when you create a new import or you save a template. But once you make a change to your template, that template will keep the settings that you just set for that one. So these are the default for new ones. This comes from our old product, iImport. And in the case that we're updating, and I have some spreadsheets, and maybe this spreadsheet has a new occupation and a spouse name. Well, sometimes in my spreadsheet, the spouse name is blank. What do you want the data management suite to do when it sees your source field as being blank? We recommend you ignore that, right? Don't go and erase the data in iMIS just because the source was blank. Maybe that's what you want. And if that's the case, untick this checkbox. But 9 times out of 10, we don't think you should be erasing stuff just because the data was blank in your spreadsheet or your IQA. We like to use this method instead to say, listen, if you see this in my spreadsheet or my source, then I do want you to erase what is in iMIS in that field. We're going to show you an example of that later where we actually change it from a tilde, which is probably hard to see on the screen right now. We're going to change it to a really cool word called erase. And so we're going to say, listen, if you find the word erase in the spreadsheet, then yes, erase the data in iMIS. Otherwise, don't. Finally, if you want to set a big old import of 10,000 records and go home, and you want to wake up and check your email and find out if it failed or not, well, that's how you notify someone. So don't put my email address in as the default. That's just here for demos. I don't, that would be bad. So, okay, enough of that. We're going to go down the path of what JT talked about. We're going to start with using insert. Our insert feature is for when you have new contacts to bring into iMIS, or you have something other than contacts and you have the iMIS ID. So the contact is already there. Same sort of thing, a single instance panel. I've got the ID. I want to bring the data into that panel. Examples. I have new contacts. I'm going to bring into iMIS. Well, I don't have an ID. I'm just bringing in new contacts. I'm inserting them. I'm also considering inserting activities, but I have the ID, or subscriptions, and I have the ID. Billing payments, where I have the ID. Gifts, where I have the ID. Gen lookup tables, no such thing as ID there, but you can just bring those in. Fun fact, billing payments and gifts cannot be updated or deleted. They can only be inserted. Okay. We're going to do some fun stuff here, right? I'm going to let JT show you some things here. What he's going to be doing, right, is he's going to go and bring in a spreadsheet of new contact records. If he's on his game, he's going to check out his spreadsheet ahead of time to make sure there's nothing bad in it. It's a really simple thing you can do. Probably the biggest issue we see is dates. Then he's going to do iImport, and then he's going to choose insert. He's going to map the fields. He's going to check his options. Hopefully he remembers to save it as a template. Templates are super powerful if you're getting the same spreadsheet over and over again. So you can just pull in that template and hit go. He's going to hit go then, and then he's going to go check the job. JT, you ready?
Yep.
All right, let's do it.
So we'll see that we are on the dashboard and we have that cloud ID. If you do have a test instance, we can point it to that as well. And if we go, we will see this cloud platform. So if anything's slow or anything along those lines, you can simply check the status of the platform there. Once that's good, we'll simply log in. Here it will load the dashboard for us, and we're going to specifically be using iImport. So like Doug mentioned, let's take a look at our spreadsheet. So we'll notice it has first name, last name, some demographic information, join date. We're going to format that quickly. So we're going to format that date as that layout. And we'll notice there is a bad join date in there. So we want to make sure that that is fixed so it doesn't throw any validation errors. So once that is good, we will save it. And you'll notice there is a sheet 2 that is blank. So there's no need for that. We're going to delete that tab. Once that's all good, we'll save again. And we will now go into iImport and select that file. Or you can drag and drop it. We'll notice the tab is new members in our spreadsheet. And we want to do, now we just do our mappings. So contact, we want that to be first name and then first name column in our spreadsheet. That looks good. Now we'll go last name, map it to last name. And there is a new enhancement to the product, which gives you the ability to sort fields. So if you have trouble finding that one field, you can sort it alphabetically to make it easier to find. From there, we're going to do email, map it to email and iMIS. And then we are going to do spouse. That is not in our contact source. It is in a panel source. So we will go navigate over to the panel sources, go to demographics, and find the spouse iMIS field. Last, we will want to add the join date. Once again, that's in a panel CS contact. And we will notice that it is right there. So we select that, we map it, everything's good. Once that is complete, we'll look at the options that are available. Now you can change these if you wanted. They could be unique to that import, but it will default to the global settings that you have. We're going to, in this case, keep the global settings, so we will just cancel this. Now, like Doug mentioned, it's important to have mappings saved. If you have an Excel file or something that comes in the same layout, you don't want to go and map those every single time. So you give it a name, description, and you can even categorize them. Once that's good, we'll save the template. And then we'll notice that its template mappings have been saved. Now we're just going to execute the task. So we're going to hit that submit button. It'll bring you to a validation screen showing you the file, the number of rows, and the action that will be happening. A review of the options and a review of the mapping, as well as a summary of what is going to be going on. From there, if everything looks good, we will just continue with the insert. So now the product is reading the rows of data in the spreadsheet, and it is going to be inserting those rows and contacts into iMIS. We'll notice it's done validating, and now it is actually creating that record, as well as bringing in the spouse and the join date for that given record. Now, iDMS does have a dashboard, so it gives you full transparency in the history of what happened. So it'll go into the data source, the duration, updated on, as well as the record counts. So the data sources you used and what happened. You can even go into that specific history and retrieve the log. So you have full transparency. This will give you also the option to download any failed records if any had failed, and allow you to dig deeper into why it failed. So that is the extent of iImport and using that insert, as well as touching on the dashboard.
Thanks, JT. Appreciate that. Is anybody else getting bad interference? I got a message from someone that there was bad interference. If you could just chat us if you are getting that. Hopefully it's on your end and not our end. Otherwise, this recording is going to be really bad too. Okay. Whew. All right. Liz, bad news. Might be you. Sorry for the recording. Oh, Liz is back. All right. Liz is back. Cool. All right. So let's continue on with the whole inserting of records. But wait a minute, JT, you just inserted a bunch of records, but I did not see you create or set the member type of those records.
Good catch. So the product, if you don't specify what member type is going to be happening in your mappings, it will default to what you have set up in iMIS. So if you go to settings, organization, that default customer type is what the product will set it as. If you do have a mapping that's member type and you hard code, say associate member, that code, then it will then bring in those contacts and give them that specific member type that you specified. But Doug, let's see another example of inserting, this time with activities, and we do actually have IDs.
Got it. So I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but iMIS has this cool tickler system, if you will, and I'll show you it at the end here. But you can import call activities or any type of activity that is set up with a tickler date, if you will. This is a great example that we do see some organizations do. They create a spreadsheet using create an IQA spreadsheet, use an IQA to create a spreadsheet, and they hand this off to a volunteer. And they say, hey, do me a favor, go call these members. I did it when I was on the board of NIOG. We'd call people who hadn't renewed, right? And we'd dole it out, and each board member got 10 people to call. Hi, I'm Doug Morris. Do you want to renew? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. So what we're going to do in this next example is kind of show you, I've created this spreadsheet. I've handed it off to a board member or a volunteer. He or she has made a bunch of calls for us and said, we have some notes regarding the call. We have some follow-up that we want to do, and we want to assign this follow-up to someone. I don't know who, so that when they log into iMIS on that follow-up date, they'll be notified, oh, that's what's going on. So we're showing you a real world example, but we're going to be using the insert function, and we're going to be bringing in activities. And since we have the ID, this is real easy to do. Okay, what's it kind of look like? Well, you can see here, I've got my IDs, I have my activity types, I've got some notes and a follow-up date. I don't have, who really should be doing this. Now I could put it in here and I could put a bunch of staff members in there. I'm not going to do that, right? Actually, I know we're going to stick Doug with all of these because I always get stuck with the yucky stuff. So, but we're going to actually set that in the product. We don't need to have data in our spreadsheet. So we're going to drag that spreadsheet right into the data management suite. And there's all of our fields. Life looks good there. Perfect. And I like it. I don't have to bring all those fields in. So let's go and do an insert. Now, remember, insert can be other new data where I have the ID. And so I do have the ID. So I'm going to choose insert. Now we're going to add our mapping. Now, you can do this one of two ways. Since I have the ID, I can choose activity ID and put it right there. But the product will also say, if you tell me contact ID, I know that's going to match to activity ID. So it'll self-join those two tables if you want. But in this case, I'm just going to do activity ID. I could have done contact, and Data Management Suite is smart enough to know what's going on. But I chose activity just because I felt like it. I'm going to now add my mappings. Okay, activity type to activity type. These are really straightforward and fast. I'm cruising along. Activity dates give me my transaction date. Great. I've got to have, I don't need notes or anything like that. I do need notes, but I don't need the individual's name because I already know their ID. I'm going to use the sort here because, I'm trying to find, there is no, it did perfect. So I hit sort, sorted alphabetical so I could find note. iMIS likes to put them in fun orders. I know this one is going to be the tickler date. Great, we're all set there. Save. I've got everything pretty well mapped out here, okay? But I did sort of forget who's going to be assigned to this. So now I'm going to go in here, I'm going to choose source code, and I'm going to go over to the input down below since it's not coming from my spreadsheet, and I'm going to hard code Doug. So you can hard code things for your import or your update. Real easy to do. You don't have to have them in your source. I could save my mappings, but you already saw JT and how he did all that fun stuff. Everything looks good. We're going to double check our options. Excuse me. I'm not going to skip my validation step or anything fun like that. I do want to continue on air. There's only 4 of them. I don't care. Life looks good. We're going to hit submit. Calls ready to go. I'm going to bring all these calls in that were made by that awesome volunteer, and we're going to stick Doug with having to follow up with all of them. It's only 4 records. It's going to go pretty quick. We're going to do some validation after we get a working agent. I like that, as opposed to a non-working agent. It's done. Okay. That was cool. Now you're kind of like, what happened? Well, this is what it does in iMIS. Here's Alexis's record. Hit refresh. And look, now there's a task out here assigned to Doug, and he's supposed to follow up on April 4th. So that's what I just did. I brought those call activities into iMIS, and I assigned them to one of the wonderful people at my organization named Doug to follow up. So that's how easy it is to do. I can, of course, JT showed you, go to the dashboard, make sure everything worked great by clicking on the completed button. If that says failed, you can click on that and download your bad records or whatever. So that's super powerful. So that is how easy it is to bring in activities when you have the ID. But let's shift gears. Insert's pretty easy. We're going to build on everything here until we get to the delete. And so now we're going to talk about when to use insert with matching. This is super powerful. What this means is I'm inserting new data, but the contact record is already in iMIS. The person already exists in iMIS, but the problem is my new data is missing that all important iMIS ID. Often that's because where you're getting the data from doesn't know what an iMIS ID is. They might not even know what iMIS is. So I'm going to be bringing in this new data. It's data other than contact data, right? I'm not bringing in brand new contacts, but I don't have an ID. Some examples. Well, activities. I could be bringing in activities where I didn't have an ID. Subscriptions, billing payments, gifts, and remember, those are insert only. So a perfect example that I think we're going to have JT showing here in a minute is a great way to bring in gifts from a third party, right? Gifts from a third party where I have some data in this data set that helps me find the record I want to insert to in iMIS. Well, if my source has data that I can match up to iMIS, then I really want to match on multiple fields. I don't want to just match on, say, last name. If I match on just last name and last name is Smith, then every record that has a last name of Smith is going to get a gift added to it or an activity added to it. Very bad. So the other thing to remember is we only match right now on the entire field name. So last name has to be a perfect match to the entire last name, not just the first 4 letters. We have a workaround for this. We're going to show you in the advanced training someday. Right now, unfortunately, we do not match on things like address, user credentials, user roles, and communication preferences. So what we're going to have JT do, if he's good, right, is we are going to have him insert these gifts into iMIS. These gifts came from a third party. He's going to be using insert with matching. But here's a tip. This isn't the best way to bring these in. We're going to show you the best way in a few moments, but JT's going to show you this, and then he's going to show you what goes wrong because he is making the terrible assumption that every one of these records already exists in iMIS. But ultimately, we want to bring these gifts in. So JT, you ready?
Yep.
Bring those gifts in, JT.
Yeah, so if we'll see some demographic information as well as that gift data. So we want to bring this into iMIS. So we'll utilize iImport, and we will simply select that file. So gifts from third party, perfect. We'll notice that the tab is the donors tab, and we are going to insert with matching. We don't have that ID, so we're going to match on different criteria. So let's go ahead and start our mappings. So we're going to find email, goes to email, and we'll notice is match on is already selected. You cannot uncheck that checkbox. So we'll save. We'll want last name. So if you find a match on email and last name, that is the record we want the gift to go to. Now we need to handle the gift data. So we go to the fundraising source, amount, matches up with amount in our spreadsheet. The check number will match to the check number field in iMIS. And then you will go to pay or gift item, and that will be the gift item ID. Payment method, that will be the payment method ID in iMIS. And then the last mapping we want is date, and that's going to be the transaction date. So we'll save that mapping. We'll see all that. Once it looks good, we'll submit it. So some light some validation screen show you the file, and this error comes up. It is a bug within our product that we're assessing, but it will bring in that new gift. So if we do continue with insert with matching, we will see that it is going to go row by row and find that record and bring that gift item into iMIS and place it onto their record. So you'll see matching record, created gift, and there was an error. So no matching record was found. So this is why Doug said that this is not necessarily the best way to do this. I implied that I just assumed everybody was in iMIS already. And in this case, they weren't all in. So now that gift is not added to that contact that was in our spreadsheet.
Cool. And one of the slides that JT is going to talk about is we're going to be able to import registrations and orders down the road. Imagine how powerful, I know you're probably watching this going, but we don't do fundraising. Imagine how powerful that's going to be able to be when you can import registrations. So we're really excited about stuff like that. But let's talk about update, the update feature, okay? Update's really easy when I want to update data already in iMIS. Your source can be an IQA, or it can be, which means the data is already there, or a spreadsheet, right? But you got to be able to find the records you want to update. That's primarily the great thing. So you need stuff like an ID, right? If I'm going to match on ID and I'm updating a given contact record, I know that's a one-to-one match. Just like if I'm updating something in a single instance panel, like demographics that JT showed us, that's a one-to-one match. If I have the ID, that's all I need. You could, just like we saw a minute ago, not have the ID and then go match on other fields. So maybe your spreadsheet has last name and email, and that's good enough for you. You don't have the ID, but that's fine. We'll find the contact record using that data. Some examples. I want to update spouse, right? We talked about that. I have a spreadsheet of spouses out here. I'm going to bring them into iMIS, right? Changing member type or paid through or anything on the contact, we can now update. User credentials, we can uncheck the locked out checkbox. You will be able to change passwords coming soon. Right now, you can insert passwords, but you can't change them. ASI is making a change to the API to allow that. Really excited. Couple more cool things you can do with update. These are some of my favorite features of the product. You can ruin your database. That's a lot of fun, which in turn will ruin your day or ruin your DBA's day. Or as JT is very good, because when he practices, he has ruined our activity table multiple times. And he's done that because he didn't avoid some of the bad things. First, you'll want to match on at least a guaranteed unique field if possible. So as I mentioned, match on ID if you're updating the contact or a single instance panel or user-defined table. If you're updating the activity table, if you can get the sequence number, which is normally from an IQA, that's going to be guaranteed. But if you don't have that, then you're going to want to match on more than one field. And the product's just going to beg you to do that. It's going to beg you to do that. A great example. If I want to update an activity, I want to match on ID, activity type, and transaction date. That narrows it down to probably a single activity. Not guaranteed, but a lot closer. If I'm doing a multi-instance, I'm going to match on ID and something else in that multi-instance table. If I'm going to update subscriptions, I'm going to match on ID and product code. That's guaranteed to be unique. So, JT?
Yes. So remember our call activities we assigned to Doug? Well, he actually followed up earlier than he was supposed to. And so now we need to update those records in iMIS. So we want to erase the follow-up date. So we're going to use that function where if the product sees the word erase, it is going to erase that field in iMIS. So we'll also notice that we have an ID, we have the activity type, and we have the activity date. So Doug, show us how it's done.
All right, so cool. I've got the spreadsheet back, right? I'm now going to use that same spreadsheet. So Doug did it outside of iMIS because he could have just updated in iMIS, but he didn't feel like it. So as JC said, I've erased follow-up dates on those that I don't need to follow up on. I've set a new follow-up date for the one person who I was not able to get a hold of. So let's go. We're going to go ahead and take a look at our spreadsheet here, our renewal calls follow-up. And it looks like this. You can see I've got my ID, all the other data. I want to erase the follow-up date. I want to reset it on one of them. Perfect. We're going to use update for this, right? So let's add that file in here. And we are going to go down here to update. Notice update existing data does not add anything new. You do need to match on some key fields. Very important. Okay. So some warnings there and whatnot. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to start adding my mapping. Notice we give you a nice warning here. Please match on lots of fields. The first thing I'm going to do is match on ID. Now, at this point, if I were to just leave it alone like this, every one of those IDs is going to have all of their activities in iMIS updated. That's bad. So bad that we give you even more warnings, as you saw on the top of that screen. So now we're going to match on activity type. And now we got two there. That's great. But now we're going to update every call activity. I don't want that. So I want to find the call activities for the given transaction date. So I'm matching on as many fields as possible. We're going to set our follow-up date. And that is going to be, it is out here. Oh, use my little sort thing. I had that put in because I could never find stuff during a demo. It's the tickler date. And great, and follow-up notes. And I'm going to set that into note 2, which is where our follow-up notes go. And we're all set. So you can see here, we've matched on 3 different fields to find our unique activity to update per ID. We're going to update our follow-up notes and our follow-up date. But we need to, once we've set all these and we feel really good about them, we're going to need to do one important thing, right? If we look at the spreadsheet, once again, remember we were using the word erase. We weren't using the tilde. Well, gosh, tilde is my default. And so I need to change it for this job. I'm going to edit my current options. And I'm going to say, if you find the word erase in the cell, then erase the data in iMIS. So I've actually told the data management suite, look for the word erase. And if you see it, delete what you see in that field in iMIS. We're all good. We're going to hit submit task. We're going to double check everything here, make sure everything's matched on, right? We're matching on those 3 fields. We're updating these other ones. Looks good. Continue with the update. In a perfect world, you're going to see 4 records updated. If it kept going after 4, that's when you'd use the stop this action button up top because you're in the process of ruining your database, which would be bad. So that's super important to do that. I wanted to make the stop this action when you clicked on it, you'd have like 8 minutes to Venmo me money. Otherwise the job would recontinue. I thought that would be a really cool enhancement. You know, you've stopped the job for 8 minutes. It's going to restart unless you Venmo. But apparently that was, our attorneys said that was not appropriate. Violation of something or whatever. Okay. Let's keep talking, right? Let's talk about insert update, right? This is where we've got data that may or may not be an iMIS. And normally I want to insert new data if there's no match. And I want to update data if there is a match. And that was great, except when you didn't want to update. So we added that new feature to say, hey, sometimes I want to insert but not update. That's our new feature. Great use cases. A spreadsheet of contacts who attended an event. Cool. So my third-party registration people gave me a spreadsheet. Here's everybody that went to this event, right? Some are in iMIS, some aren't, but I want to add a meeting activity at all of them. So in that case, I want to go ahead and insert new records into iMIS and add an activity. And if the record is already in iMIS, I just want to add the activity. How about this? Just like what JT showed you before, insert or update contacts and insert a gift. So if you notice when JT did that, it failed on JT Gallus's record. That was the one that failed because that record didn't exist in iMIS. So JT, walk us through using insert update and do it right this time.
Yes. So we're going to pretend like we didn't insert those gifts before, and we're going to do it right like Doug mentioned. We'll notice JT Gallus, that is the record that was not in our iMIS environment. So we're going to take a different approach. We're going to go iImport, and we're going to select that gifts file. Now, we will be using the insert update instead of the insert with matching. So this is going to add new rows and records, update existing data, and there's a note, it is extremely powerful. So we want to make sure we match on the correct things to identify the correct record if it's in iMIS. So we will simply select contact, email, and we'll want to match on that. Once that is checked, we will save it and we will go to first name. We want to have the first name in there because if the records don't exist, we want to bring in that information. So we'll also match on last name. So it is identifying the email and last name. If it matches, bring the gift into that record. If not, let's create it. So we'll go to fundraising and we'll select the amount, and that matches up with the amount field in our spreadsheet. Check number. So we're doing the same process that we did before. So if we did save these mappings, we could have loaded the template and had them pre-populate automatically. But we'll just finish off this mapping payment method, and then we will finish off with the date, which would be the transaction date. Once that's good, we will then go down to our options. So this is going to be utilizing the new functionality of do not update records, insert only when no match is found. So if the record's in there, just insert the gift. Do not update the demographic information we mapped. But if they're not in iMIS, bring in everything and create a new record. So that option has been set. We'll notice down here that it is insert only. So once that option is selected, that will populate. We'll submit it, and it gives you the validation screen and a short summary of what's going to happen. Looks all good, so we will continue with this action. It's going out there. It is reading the rows of data, and it's found the record, created a gift. And it's just working through the spreadsheet, and once it hits JT Gallus, we'll notice it has created that record and assigned him a new iMIS ID. So we'll highlight that quick, created record, and then it also created that gift onto his record. So that is the proper way to handle this situation instead of doing the insert with matching.
Thanks, JT. All right, our newest feature, the delete. Ooh. When you use delete, when you want to delete data from, say, a panel source, any type of panel source, right? We're actually using it. We have a standalone panel source that's being populated with, say, our iTransfer product. So it's being dumped into nightly by a third party. And then we're pulling data out of that panel source. Well, now we want to delete it. So you can delete data from a single instance, multi, or standalone. Really cool. Activities. Did your insert, you inserted 200,000 activities. That was bad. You want to delete them. You can do that now. iDMS, the new relationship killer. It'll delete relationships if you want. It'll delete user credentials if you're in the mood. And it'll delete entire gen lookup tables or just certain fields in them. Now, you're probably like, oh gosh, Doug, I really wanted contact. I want to delete contacts. Well, ASI is not, doesn't have the REST API quite ready to delete contacts. So right now, they're always recommending that you mark a contact for erasure. And I want to remind you, you can do that using the data management suite. We're going to show you that in a minute, but it's very easy to do to mark a contact for erasure. And then the iMIS process automation task is going to grab that and remove all of the personally identifiable information on that record. And they're going to be, for all intent and purposes, erased. So you want to delete a contact in iMIS, you mark them for erasure. You can do that with the data management suite. Great use cases. As I said, delete some activities, delete data in panels, end a relationship, all sorts of fun things. Sometimes you don't want to use delete, okay? For instance, we used to have the ability to delete committees. That's bad, right? You're not supposed to delete committees. You're supposed to put a through date on them. You're supposed to set the through date to the past, and that removes a person from a committee, but retains the history. You could, of course, still delete committee activities. Committee activities are truly regular activities, so you could still delete committee activities, but really, just a heads up, we had it in the product, I had it taken out. You're not supposed to be deleting committees. I don't want to make that easy for people. Delete's got some really, really other powerful things that it can help you do. It can help you get fired, okay? It can help you ruin your database. It can ruin your day, of course, or ruin your DBA's day, right? Super, super powerful, lots of fun things you can do, right? So if you want to avoid those for the third or fourth or fifth time, match on a guaranteed unique field, if at all possible, ID for single instance panel, or sequence for activity. And if you can't get those, match on more than one field. We keep saying it over and over again, always match on multiple fields. So, JT, I don't want those call activities anymore. Get rid of them.
All right, sounds good. So if we look at the spreadsheet, we'll notice ID, and it's the same spreadsheet that we previously used for our renewal calls. Now, Doug wants me to delete these activities. So we will simply load that file, and we will select the delete action item. So this deletes existing data in our system. There is no undo option, and we recommend that you have training prior to using it. However, we do not offer training, so be very careful when using the delete functionality.
Or get out of jail free card.
Yes. So these are all the sources, like Doug mentioned, that you can currently delete from. In this case, we are dealing with call activities, so we will select activities. From there, we just do our mappings. So activity type will be matched on, and you cannot uncheck that checkbox. So then once we do that mapping, we don't want that to be the sole thing. That's not unique. So we're going to narrow down our records and which ones we want to delete. So we want to even further bring it to transaction date is match on. So we are matching on 3 separate fields to identify that unique row of data. Like Doug mentioned, if it wasn't unique and say we only matched on ID, that would delete all of the activities in that or linked to that given ID. So we want to make sure we find and identify the correct row that we want to delete. We'll go ahead and submit it. Once again, the number of rows, the action item, your options, your mapping, and then a short summary. Looks good, so let's run it. Here it's reading the rows of data, and we can see that it is actually deleting that call activity from their record. So it is that simple to delete a row of data within iMIS using iDMS.
That was cool. I'm going to show you a different way to do it. Okay. JT had to, hope that there was a unique ID activity type and follow-up date on all those records. If you were paying real close attention, the bottom one said 2 deleted, and that was a 5th row. So it's a little risky. If you remember, sequence is a better field to use. So I can use iUpdate and do everything JT just did, right? And it's going to allow me to actually preview what's going to happen. So I like this a lot better. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do that. What we're going to do here is we're going to create an IQA. I'm going to use the activity, and I'm going to go out here and filter some things. Activity type, call, transaction date was that, and reminder date was that. So imagine we haven't erased our reminder date yet. And now my display, I need to make sure has sequence in it. Great. I can see these are the 4 activities I actually want to delete, right? There's not 5 like JT had, right? It was 4. So great. Here are the 4 activities. I'm going to save this IQA. So I found the data that I want to delete. I found it using an IQA. I'm going to jump back into iUpdate now. I'm going to choose that IQA. Find call activities to delete. Going to select it. Make sure that's correct. Now I'm going to go over to delete. Okay. And in this, remember, I'm going to be using the sequence field, right? So I know that sequence in activity is a key field. And you can even see there's a key on it right there, sequence number. So I know it's a 1-to-1 match. That's all I have to match on is sequence because it's got a key on it. Great. Save. And now we can go ahead and submit. Notice, hey, you're only matching on one field. You sure you know what you're doing? Yeah, I think I do. I've been to the iDMS training. So some notes down here, continue with delete. And it's going to go and find those 4 records that I want to delete and actually delete them right here. Guaranteed. I don't have to worry about losing my job or anything like that. So I tightened up my delete using a quick thing. We're going to get more into that as we do the more advanced training, but that's an interesting way to do it. All right. So let's get into some common questions. How do I delete contacts? I already told you, you can't. But what you can do is you can mark the contact for erasure using iImport or iUpdate. And to do that, you set that to a 1, a T, a true, a Y, a yes, or active. Active sounds funny, but it works. If you have iSchedule, jobs do not run in your time zone. They run in UTC. So if you're in London, you're in luck, okay? But otherwise, the rest of us kind of have to do some adjustments. We tried to make this in your time zone. It's hard. This product is used in Australia. The product's used in the UK. The product's used in North America, right? So it's all over the place. And it's so hard to figure out daylight savings. It's so hard to figure out time zones. There's an area of Australia that's 30-minute. There are 30-minute time zones. Talk about fun there. So we don't do it. It's UTC. It's not going to support daylight savings changes and all that. The good news is I think we're getting rid of them here in the US. So I'm excited about that. Next up, if you have a whole bunch of fields in your Excel spreadsheet, do you need to map them all? No, only map the fields you use. You saw when we did that with a spreadsheet, there was a bunch of other information on like who to call and their phone number. We just ignore it. Even the IQA I just wrote, a bunch of data in it. I only needed 1 field. At this time, due to the way the REST API works, everything's going to say updated by using your background account that's set up in our cloud environment. The good news is that ASI is changing the way the API is called, and we hope that we'll be able to show who was logged in and be able to identify who did the dastardly deed. The asterisks and icons that you saw, right? Remember that's key, and then the other one means required. So if you're inserting data and you see a little asterisk there, that means that field is required by iMIS. So you have to have it. And the key field means it's unique. JT, anything else?
Yes, a common question we get is, can iDMS be set up to unlock and or set up user credentials? And the answer to that is yes. With EMS, you can set the unlock user account to 0, F, false, and anything with that. With 2017, you must set the is locked out iMIS field to 0, and that is found in the user data business object. We are looking at doing sample IQAs and templates to make it even easier for you to replicate it in your own iMIS instance. Another one, what is the maximum number of records I can do in a single job? We recommend 10,000, However, you can do up to 250,000. And like it says on the screen, if you're cray cray, you do 250,000, but you can break them up. Do you have to stay on the log page when the job is running? No, you can set it and forget it. You can close the browser. Once it's going, you can hit the cancel import, but if it is doing what it's supposed to do, you can just leave it. Another common one is, can you schedule jobs to run by being triggered? And we are looking at an enhancement to iSchedule, but currently that is not available.
Oh, we're adding it. We're adding it.
Yes.
You'll be able to actually fire off an iSchedule job using Power Automate, which will be really cool.
Yes, and along with that enhancement, steps are going to be added to iSchedule. So if it is a success, move on to this one, and that will be added. But currently, it is not supported.
All right, some best practices, right? Try not to schedule your jobs to run at the same time. You've got a whole bunch of jobs, space them out 5, 10, 20 minutes or whatever. We do see a lot of peaks in our Azure usage. So I know that people like to schedule a lot of their jobs at the same time. Spread them out if possible. 5th, 6th, 7th time, I don't know how many times you said this, match on as many fields as you can when you're doing an insert with match, an insert update, or an update or delete, match on as many fields as possible. Check the validation screen carefully, but remember, sometimes it scares you when it doesn't mean to. The validation screen is really hard for us. We want it to be informative, and people are really creative with how they match fields. And so sometimes it gets a little confused on what you're doing. So we'll give you our support email address. You can always email us and go, hey, this is scaring me. Is this correct? We had someone recently send something in. They're like, I don't want to run this because it says it's going to do this. Well, it wasn't going to do that. Everything was fine. We have a bad error message. We're always working on those. As JT said, try to limit to 10,000 records per import, but you can actually run multiple imports at once. So my peers like to do this to beat up the system. They'll go and they'll say, well, all right, 10,000 records at a time. I get it. So they'll fire off an import. They'll go grab another spreadsheet of 10,000 records and fire off an import. And they'll go grab another and fire off an import. We've got a client right now. I don't think I'm even legally allowed to say where they are, who they are. They are running they're bringing in millions and millions of records to their database. And they're doing it right now. I think they have 7 jobs running right now, 10,000 records each job. And they just keep doing it all the time. Invest in Microsoft right now. That's all I can tell you, because man, my Azure bill is crazy. But anyway, okay. So we talked about JT ruining databases, and he's really good at that. So he's created a quick best practice that he wanted to share with you here of how he now saves the day when he does something silly.
Yes, so this is a little trick I like to use. So creating an IQA of the data subset you're going to update. So you want to create an IQA to back up the data before I update it. So I'll simply run the IQA and export the results as an Excel file. Then if I mess up using iDMS after performing those updates, I can go back to step number 2 and access the Excel file that I had and import it using iMport, so I can restore my data to how it previously was. So that's a little undo kind of option that you can utilize. Like Doug mentioned, I've used it quite a bit for cleaning up some mistakes that I have done. But what's coming next for iDMS? So coming soon, we are going to support the ability to import products. We are going to have the insert, update, group membership functionality. And then, like Doug mentioned, we are going to have the update passwords. So not just creating it like you can today, but actually being able to update passwords. In 2022, we have been getting a lot of enhancement requests for supporting orders and event registration. So in 2022, those are 2 additional functionalities that we will be enhancing iDMS to support.
All right, so we're going to turn over to questions. We only have about 4 minutes left. Heads up, our support team is 3 people now. I don't know any other product provider out there that has a support team, much less 3 people in support. So we really believe in this. We want to get the stuff turned around as fast as possible. So that's out there. Our support email address, as a reminder, is there. You can use that for, hey, can you look at my mapping? I'm getting a weird warning. You can use that for, gosh, I wish the data management suite made coffee every morning. Send in your requests, right? We look at them as the product owner. I look at it and I go, gosh, everybody keeps asking for this one thing. I will tell you this, some of my friends that have pictures of me over the years doing things that I regret doing, they also get their enhancements done. The product importing is being done for Sarah Hodnott. Once again, many years ago, you know, Canada, whatever, alcohol, whatever, bad things. So Sarah gets her product importing, but no, and seriously, that's going to be a really good thing for the product. All of our documentation is here, and even there, we have some how-to videos. So we've been working on that a lot. So if you go to docs.csinc.com, go to apps, go to the data management suite, and then we have a bunch of video tutorials that we've been adding out here. When people are like, how do I update panel data? Oh, it's so easy. Well, you know what? Let's show them how easy it is. So lots of stuff out here. We're going to keep adding to these. A lot of times someone will say, how do I do this? I'll be working on a Saturday. I'll crank out a video. JT will have it posted by Monday. So we want to keep making that better. So I don't know if we have any questions. Good. JT, you know we did a great job when there's no questions. Or you shut off the Q&A and the invite, which I think both are very fair. So you're all going to get a recording of this. If you're on the phone, if you're hearing this recording and you're from Asia Pacific, no, this is not the video you saw yesterday. As I said, JT and I, that was not one of our best things, but today was a lot better. So this is going to be the one that goes out to Asia Pacific as well. So I want to thank you all for being here. I hope it was informative. If you think there are things that we could have covered better, or you have any feedback, please do not hesitate to email it to support@csinc.com. It makes a ticket. We can't hide from that. So any feedback you have, we'd love to hear from you. Just blast us, if you will. Thanks again. We appreciate all of your support, and we're looking at making the product even better. As you saw, a lot of enhancements coming, at least through June 30th. We're 2 developers working full time on this. So thank you so much.